I would like to think I am someone who's an eternal optimist. In July 2012, I submitted my first 20,000 feet peak, and I did that as 100% vegan. And that was sheerly I just wanted to prove to myself that this can be done. And since then, I have never looked back.
What about your recovery being on a plant-based diet? Because that's something that people question.
Plants have all the nutrition that humans of all ages, right from 0 to 100, can consume to not just survive but thrive.
How did you get your B12 and D3?
From supplements. If I have to be a vegan, right, it can't just be what is on my plate. It also has to be about what is on my body. It also has to be about everything I do, right? Even things like, is my toothpaste tested on animals?
So do you almost think being non-vegetarian is better than being vegetarian?
I 100% think actually being, the only problem is that non-vegetarians are also consuming milk. Either you are a vegan or you are a non-vegetarian. There's no vegetarian in between.
Hi Kuntal, welcome to Sustainability with Shreya. It's so lovely to have you here and thank you for being a part of this. I know Kuntal, you're a vegan mountaineer who scaled Everest twice. You're also a fitness and nutrition coach and you're a vegan adventure tour operator. Tell me more about that.
So first of all, thank you for a very kind introduction. Regarding climbing Everest couple of times, so online I'm infamous as the first vegan in the world to climb Everest. And one thing that I wanted to kind of talk about that bit is that it's very difficult to kind of figure out whether I am the first vegan in the world to climb Everest. So when I went vegan in 2002,
What pushed you to go vegan back then? Because 2002, I think it was still unheard of. I don't think there were that many vegans even back then. I don't even know about that many now, but I think 2002 was definitely, there wasn't much awareness. There wasn't much talk about people going vegan. So what made you go vegan back in 2002?
so I had shifted to the US to do my master's degree in computer science. And here in Mumbai, a little bit more backstory. Here in Mumbai, I was born and brought up in a vegetarian family. So
Gujarati household.
Gujarati household. So I have always been like a vegetarian. And growing up, I kind of thought of myself as like a very superior person, like as an elitist. Like, I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat animals. I take care of animals. Like, I'm better than you, kind of a thought process. And but then I would occasionally go into the school and then see that someone has brought like a cake which had eggs in them.
Would you consume that?
I would not consume that, but then I would really be curious, like, why are we not doing that? So then I would come home and I would ask my parents that why don't we eat meat? Why don't we eat eggs? And my mom was like, look on the street, there's this cow. She's walking with, her bachda, and it's like us, right? We have a family, like, how you and me, it's like the cow and her bachda. So do we eat other humans? I'm like, no. Then why would we eat them? They are family. They are like us. They feel pain. They feel sadness. They feel joy. They're basically like us. So I'm like, if we don't eat them, if we don't eat other humans, why would we eat them? That was the concept. And I was like, this makes sense.
You bought that? You bought into that empathy extended to them being cows and them having families, them having emotions. Did you buy into that empathy?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
Okay.
But I was like, not from an empathy angle, right? So I believed it from an angle, okay, this makes sense. I shouldn't do it. Not truly from internally, I felt like that I shouldn't do this, but I was like, okay, chalo.
So religious conditioning, cultural
Religious
upbringing.
conditioning, things around. And I was still like attached to this. I'm elitist. Like, I'm better than others, just from this angle, like I'm different than others. So like, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to continue doing this until I went to the United States and I became a little more independent. And then I had the money to buy my own things. Until then, I was like, my parents are giving me pocket money and all those things were happening. Now I'm in the US doing a job, still a part-time job, but making, some money that I could pay for my food and everything. At that point, it wasn't like I started eating meat and I started eating eggs, but I definitely was, okay, I'm going to eat the cakes which have eggs in them. I am going to eat like Snickers bar which had eggs in it. I'm going to buy the leather belts.
What was the thought process behind that? Behind you choosing to?
I had never gotten to eat it earlier, and so it was like I want to eat it now. And the concept that it's just in a shelf. How can there be any animal killed for like my cake? That there was no connection of that. Or like, okay, this leather belt, where is it coming from? Oh, I'm going and buying it from like,
From a store.
from a store. It's like nicely packaged. Where's a dead animal? Right. So I would kind of get all of these things and I started purchasing all of these things. But I had a couple of roommates and one of them was an ethical vegetarian.
What's an ethical vegetarian?
It's a paradox, but back then, he's still an ethical vegetarian. So
Okay.
good for him. But he started kind of looking at my choices and he's like, why are you eating eggs? Why are you. Okay, I also have to talk about eggs was that I couldn't consume the omelette.
I think that's with a lot of us growing up, because I grew up in a Jain family, a Jain Marwari family, and it's the same thing. You consume milk, you consume ghee, paneer, all of these things, but somehow when it comes to egg, it's almost classified as non-vegetarian. But when you go abroad, egg is part of a vegetarian diet, pretty much, because milk comes from an animal, egg comes from an animal. It's that logic, right? But for us, it's egg is categorized as something outside of the whole vegetarian diet bucket.
But it was so hypocritical on my part because if the egg came as part of a cake, I was okay eating it. But if it came as part of an omelette where it was in my face, I didn't want to eat it. So it was still this, this cognitive dissonance, or I don't know what to
Why do you
call it.
think we have that?
I have no idea. I really, never put in like thought behind like why I was like that, what was going on, and why did I do that. I'm like, I feel a lot of, maybe at least specifically in my case, I don't want to generalize it. I think a lot of apathy generally for things like animals, because मेरी लाइफ में इतना सब है यार, मैं क्या एनिमल्स के लिए क्या करूँ यार, मेरी खुद की लाइफ के इतने प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, सो आई एम लाइक व्हाई डू आई केयर अबाउट द एनिमल, सो लाइक अ लॉट ऑफ एपैथी फॉर द केस ऑफ एनिमल राइट्स स्पेसिफिकली. And I think the other thing was just convenience. Convenience of this thing that I've never eaten this cake in my life. I really like it. I really see it. It's so tasty. I want to eat it. And not knowing that there is an alternative available. Right? So it's like, this is the only thing I really want to eat it. Right?
But usually it is, the only thing that is available is that cakes that have eggs, or pasta that has eggs.
Especially if you are like in a very like in a setting in the US where you are in the school which is not very vegan friendly, right? So you are okay, this is what is available and I'm going to eat it. So this guy started like pointing out to the choices I was making, and he like just literally like became this nagging auntie in my life. Like I'm like all the time I would go to a grocery store and he's like, why are you taking this? I would buy an ice cream, why are you taking this? And one day I got so fed up of him. I'm like, why? You tell me why I shouldn't consume this. So he's like, okay, here's a video. So he shared this is in 2002 December. He shared a video of from PETA, um, because back then there was still no YouTube. I mean, YouTube was there, but it was not like we knew about YouTube. Right, so it was PETA website, and he sent a link about mainly the egg industry because he was more worried about my egg consumption and also my leather, like the jackets and the belts and the wallets that I was buying.
Right.
So he came from a Jain family,
Okay.
and for him, egg and like leather was like a big no. So he was
Ahimsa.
from a Jeevdaya, from a Karuna, from an Ahimsa angle. So he was like kind of pushing me for it. And so I started like, I first went and read the article. There was a video at the bottom. So I saw the undercover footage of what happens in the egg industry.
Would you like to tell us what happens in the egg industry?
So it started from the whole process of debeaking of chicks. But I think the most gruesome part was if there is a male chick, which there are millions and millions and millions of them, are just as soon as they are born, they are ground alive, or they are like gassed, or they are killed in a certain way. But not even sheer that, just the way the chicken is kept, grown, and totally exploited and abused for us. I think the whole end-to-end life cycle of the chicken industry, I was like, shit, I never thought about this. Like, it was like bam, what happened? And PETA had such an awesome website back then. The moment the chicken video got over, just below there was a link. Check out the leather industry. I'm like, okay, I saw one.
Down
I'm
the
gonna,
rabbit hole.
click. So then I saw the leather industry, and I'm like, no cow is walking up to me and saying, yeah, skin me alive and take my skin and wear my skin. So I'm like, this is, and then the dairy industry, right? This was like, he didn't talk to me about dairy industry at all, but I looked into the dairy, like I clicked on the dairy industry video, And I think out of all the videos I had seen, this was the most shocking video. I'll tell you, with meat, it's pretty straightforward. The animal is just being killed, right?
Right.
I'm never going to contribute to that ever in my life. But then I started looking at milk industry right from the step one when you are artificially inseminating a cow. I saw that video and I'm like, oh my God. And like, look, I don't want to compare or, like compare two species, two different, like, it's really complicated topic here, but the very first thing that came to my mind was this is right, like a of a species. I don't want to compare the of a cow to a of a human female. I don't want to get into that, but it was still a of a cow, right? There is no consent involved here, and you are literally putting your hand in the vagina of a cow and inseminating it. The very inception or the start of the process is absolute shock to me. I'm like, what is going to happen forward? I don't even know. And then you look at the entire process of how, like when is cow going to give milk? When it's pregnant, right? Who the milk is for? The baby cow. Is it for us? No. But imagine now a male calf being born. The male calf is going to drink the milk, but it is totally useless in the cycle of this industry. So the male calf is taken away and slaughtered
Leather.
for leather, for the bones, for everything, right? Gelatin industry and whole host of industry. They literally are not going to leave any part of that animal, including the legs, in any part of that animal. Okay, it's
Capitalized, monetized on.
everything. So then I'm looking at the female, right? The female is going through the say, like this cow is going to go through like maybe 8-10 years of incessant abuse through the whole lifetime. And I'm like, then if a female cow is born, it's going to happen the same. And at the end of the life, this cow is going to get slaughtered and monetized. So I'm like, okay, there is no difference, honestly, between slaughtering the cow and milk. On the contrary, I realized that milk was far worse. I'm like, it is the cow that you are perhaps let's say there is a beef cow is different. I don't know. I haven't really done much research into this. But let's say beef cow is different and they are really not using it for milk. At least it just gets slaughtered. Its life is good. It just gets slaughtered and finished. The pain and the suffering ends.
So do you almost think being non-vegetarian is better than being
I
vegetarian?
100% think actually being the only problem is that non-vegetarians are also consuming milk, right? So I think I don't want to get into this whether being non-vegetarian is worse than being a vegetarian. My point is that being a vegetarian, you are actually being a non-vegetarian. So there's no difference there. I'm saying that either you are a vegan or you are a non-vegetarian. There's no vegetarian in between. So these vegetarians can live in the la la land and their dreamland, but they are honestly all non-vegetarian. To be very, very honest and to be very blunt here.
It's just the disconnect that at least I'm not killing the cow. It's the disconnect that I'm not consuming the animal directly.
Correct.
It's a disconnect, like you said, even when we, like, I was Jen and I've bought leather. I've purchased in leather bags before.
And you have drank milk.
I've drank, yeah. I've consumed paneer. Ghee is still such a quintessential part of our Indian diets, for that matter. So I've definitely done that. But there is that disconnect that, like you said, almost this feeling of being superior because I don't kill the animal directly.
Kill the animal, right. So for me, it was like the same point that you just brought up, the disconnect. All the three videos showed the disconnect between my compassionate thoughts and my cruel actions. So I'm like, there is definitely this reconciliation that needs to happen. And there are two ways to go about this. Either I do something about it, or either I can say that apathy is life and ignorance is bliss, and let's just move on. And there is nothing, that this is, what my life is. And I have to say that for the first time in my life, for the very first time in my life, I decided not to be, not to choose a side of apathy. I said, I'm going to take a stand, and I'm going to take the stand for animals. And I said, what is clearly in my control? What is on my plate and what goes on my body? These two things are 100% under my control. And look, I also live a very privileged life. If I've gone to the US studying in a very costly university, I'm definitely come from a privileged background. And I also acknowledge that I made a lot of these decisions based on my privilege. So I'm like, okay, all of these two things are under my control. So to just give you a point, an Eskimo sitting in northern Canada simply, may not have the privilege that I had to, choose for vegan. But I'm not even telling the Eskimo in northern Canada to go vegan, right? I'm telling, just people like me and most,
Who have the
people.
ability, resources, the knowledge, awareness, like you said, if you have the privilege, why would you not make the
Why would,
switch?
right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take the stand. And for me, it was just overnight going vegan. I looked at
It
whatever
was
was,
overnight.
it was overnight. Like every time I looked at a glass of milk, I just could see meat in there. I looked at the leather belt, I'm like, this is meat. I looked at the cheese block, this is meat. And anything that I saw, I just started seeing meat in all of those things. And I'm
Your
feeling
eyes
like,
had a filter on it almost, so everything you were seeing from that lens,
from
just
that lens. So I'm like, okay, this is it. I have to go vegan. There is no like. Also, from that perspective, I'm slightly extreme. Like, I have always been this way, where mostly things are very black and white for me. There's no shades of gray. And especially when it comes to animals, there's no shades of gray. Like I'm like, I have to be a vegan. There's, I can't unsee what I saw here. Okay, this is it. This is done. So it was just simply, figuring out what was non-vegan at my home. Like not throw it away, but like I gave it away. I lived in Santa Monica, so it was just easy to give it to the community centers
so you donated
nearby.
all the leather items,
Just
woolen items, whatever you owned.
now, if I would have done it again, if I had the choice, I would have used all of those items to the end of the life. Because look, already made the purchase, already, used all the money. The animal is already dead. But also, it's a trickier issue, because then you also have to wear the dead animal on your body, and you're always like, oh man, there's a dead animal on my body. It's so anyway.
No, that's what I struggle with. That's honestly a dilemma because I have these leather purchases from before, right? Before I went vegan. So do I, from a sustainability point of view as well, do you still keep it? Do you throw it away? Do you donate it? What do you do? And again, the whole value, the point that you brought up about your value system and it not being aligned with your ethics anymore. So do you still promote it? Do you still advocate for it? By wearing it, does that mean you're still supporting it?
Right. So it was tricky, because I'm like starting out as a vegan. I'm like, no, I just want to, like give it all away. Like I just want to have a clean slate. And honestly, I have to say that in the hindsight, two things. One of the best decisions of my life, and I'll tell you why. And the biggest regret, that why didn't I go vegan sooner? Okay, I'm pretty sure this happens to all vegans, once they are kind of through a, significant portion of their journey. But one of the best decisions, because this also, it's not like eating a broccoli changed my life. Okay, that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying taking a stand for a social justice movement, or taking a stand against oppression of a certain species, allowed me to take a step back and look at many other oppression or oppressive practices that I was supporting. Everything from patriarchy to sexism to racism to casteism to even things like LGBTQ homophobia. So many things that I realized that I was toxic about.
What is the connection between veganism and everything else that you mentioned? Veganism and patriarchy, veganism and racism, veganism or homophobia for that matter.
We are, at the end of the day, for example, let's say take the case of animals, right? We are oppressing the animals, we are abusing the animals. They don't have choice, right? So those things are happening, and same thing is happening in homophobia, right? Every human on this planet has a choice to decide what they want to do, who they love, as simple as that, right? So who am I to kind of hate against that?
So, choice, control, exploitation, discrimination.
Yes. So I was able to look into me and say, okay, man, why am I being homophobic? For what? That I'm not going to say that this journey was easy and that this journey happened overnight. It took a while to get through a lot of these things. And imagine hating yourself. Imagine saying, my God, I'm such a toxic person.
Wow,
That
you went through that?
I have, such thoughts, for someone else, and then to go on a journey to undo some of these things. And I'm like, I have been brought up in a family of such strong and progressive women, and yet I think of myself as superior to like females. How? Why?
That must have been so uncomfortable to confront
It,
your own self and
it
your
was
own
ex-
belief system.
it was tough. I have to tell you, it was extremely tough to go through that phase. But taking that stand against animal, for the animal exploitation, I think allowed me to look inward and go on this journey, which allowed me to kind of, I think, emerge as a much better human being. So if veganism didn't happen, I would have been that toxic person, I feel. Maybe later on I would have, made connections and maybe gotten better. But I think going vegan, standing up for something allowed me to stand up for a lot of things, and I continue learning and I continue growing and I continue being open-minded about so many things sometimes you have never thought about. You may not be toxic about them, but you may never have thought about some issue like that, and someone then points out to you and like, I've never thought about this. Okay. But it's always so this process happened, and that's that that's where so I went on a very long monologue here, but I thought that veganism changed my life and that everyone should be a vegan on this planet.
That's how we all feel. I think the second you go vegan, why do not more people know about this, right?
So then I was this militant activist.
Yeah.
And I was in the face vegan all the time, telling everyone to go vegan. And believe me, no one changed. The max that happened was some of my colleagues would come with me to a vegan restaurant and order a vegan meal, and that's pretty much about it. That's where it
That's
all.
still impact. I think if you switch one meal, that's still, in however smaller capacity, that's still impact.
But I wanted to have a much bigger impact because I
Course.
was holding myself to much higher standards. And so again, I was kind of seeing that I was getting very negative about this piece altogether, and I was losing friends, and I was losing like people were like, "ये तो vegan के बारे में बात करेगा." Oh, he was the vegan evangelist. He's here, and the only thing he has to talk about is veganism. It's like how people run from those multi-marketing guys, like the Amway guys, and all, oh, Amway guy, I'm like just going to disappear from here. Like I would come and they would disappear from there. So I started kind of realizing that, and I'm like, I think like having seen 21 years of veganism, I've gone through all phases. And I think that militant vegan phase just kind of naturally disappeared.
Okay.
And that is when I kind of found Everest.
How did that lead into that? And why do you think the militant activism kind of faded away? Was it because it was isolating? Was it because you were kind of pushing people away?
I think in part that is what was going on. And when I moved to India, I also started realizing, like, I had chilled down quite a bit. Like, I was not telling anyone to go vegan. But I quickly started realizing that they want me to be a vegetarian. And I'm like, this is, all role reversals. Like, I started respecting their choice in the sense that I'm no longer telling them to go vegan, but now they are no longer respecting my choice and asking me to, eat everything. And I'm like, wow, this is like, but through all of that, I remained like, really like super calm, super patient, and explained them why I'm a vegan. And over a course of time, I realized that they started seeing a lot, like they started like respecting my choice. Like I would know that after I came back to India and I would go to a dinner at someone's place, they would actually call me upfront and say, Kuntal, how to make vegan food, or how can I do this? So I'm like, this is good. Now I'm in a good space. Now, like I'm happy here. I don't want, to go out there and be in everyone's face.
What were the reasons for you to go vegetarian? Why do you think people were pushing you to go back to vegetarianism?
I think people just don't like differences. I think people just want everyone to be like them. Like today I climb mountains, right? Like I come from a Gujarati family, and they expect me to have run my dad's business or made a shit ton of money or go in that direction. And that I took a very different direction, and I'm living life my way, and I'm happy. I'm not saying anyone else is not happy. I don't care about what anyone else is doing, but I'm happy in what life I built for myself. I'm pretty, satisfied. I'm pretty content. I'm pretty relaxed, pretty chill about it. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you not thinking about your future? You should be, thinking, do you have mutual fund investments? What are your investments in your home? I'm like, I remember I was going to talk to someone about, like, hey, can you give me some sponsorship for my Everest climb? And they're like, can you explain me what is your ROI in climbing Everest? And I'm like,
How do you explain that?
this stuff doesn't, I'm not this person who connects with some of these things. And I think that baffles them, that how is this guy not worried about his future? And I think they just can't accept the differences. I honestly feel we should be celebrating our differences. And this is what takes us ahead as a race. Imagine if all of us are same, you'd just be like robots, right? Like if all of us are same, all of us are just doing the same thing, how would we progress as a race? So I
But it's also confronting for people because you're kind of mirroring maybe, what they think they should be doing. And that's not easy.
I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. They can, live their lives. I'm happy in my own. So I feel, that kind of phase chilled me out quite a bit. And During that time, I also got married, and
Is your wife vegan?
my wife has been a vegan for the last 8 years.
You do that? Were
I
you?
didn't do that. I was like, you want to eat like I had chilled out quite a bit, so I'm like, okay, if you want to be a vegetarian, be a vegetarian. I'm not here to change anything. I think during that time, my wife and I went on a vacation, and during that vacation, it was a vacation in Shimla in the winters, and that's when I fell in love with the mountains. Right, until then I had no inclination towards anything that was physical fitness related. But then we went to Shimla, and this certain episode happened where I just madly, truly, deeply just fell in love with nature. And I have to say, a state of mind that achieved in nature.
So, what was it about your that particular trip to Shimla and the love for mountains and the calling that followed after? Why that trip?
So, like, both Dipti and I were sitting. So, Dipti is my wife's name. So, both Dipti and I were sitting down, and we were trying to figure out where our next vacation should be. We were just newly married. So, we were like trying to figure out where our new vacation would be. And we thought that Dipti had never seen snow in her entire life. And I had seen like snow when I was like an 8-year-old back.
In the US, though?
I was living in Los Angeles. There's no snow in Los Angeles. So, it's like both of us hadn't seen snow for a very long period of time. So, we thought we'll go to Shimla in the winter and we'll definitely see some snow, if nothing else. So we reached to Shimla and in February of 2009, and the first 6 days of the trip were okay. We didn't see any snow. It would get overcast every day, and we would feel that we are going to see some snowfall, but it wouldn't snow at all. It was like really dry season until then. So on the seventh day, we were roaming through the Shimla market. This guy says that I will take you to a place where there's a lot of snow. So I'm like, take my money. Just-
But take me to a snow.
So he's like, take us. So he took us to this place called Narkanda. It's I would say about a 75-kilometer drive on the old Hindustan-Tibet highway. And we reached Narkanda, and we were standing near this small chai ka tapri, and we are surrounded 360 degrees by mountains on all sides. Okay, these are all snow-capped mountains, and I'm like, this is spectacular.
You'd never seen anything
I had
like it
never seen
before.
like anything. I'm like, this is awesome. And this taxi guy is like, Abhi ghar chalo. I'm like, kya ghar chalo? You said you're going to let us touch the snow. This is not, I can see this on YouTube.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay. So then we started driving.
Persistent. Yeah.
So we do this drive of about 8 kilometers to this place called Hatu Peak. And Hatu Peak is really this amazing place. Uh, a nice hill, I would say, but there was a drivable road to the top. And so we started driving, and about 1.5 kilometers into the drive, we ran into like a feet and half of snow. And he had an Alto and he didn't even have chains. He's like, bhai, mera gaadi aage nahi jayega. So I'm like, okay, this is good enough. हमें ऊपर जाके snow नहीं देखना, हमें इधर ही snow देखना है. So then both of us went, Dipti and I went, and we were like kids in a candy store, like making snowballs and throwing snowballs at each other and playing snow angels and, doing all sorts of things.
Cute.
And then like 10 minutes later, I'm like, Dipti, let's go a little ahead. So we told our driver, हम 15 minutes में आते हैं. And then we started walking. And then we walked for 15 minutes, and 15 became half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours.
Just kept going.
We just kept going, and at, I think at the 3 hour mark, there was this, we felt literally lost. We were two single human beings lost in a jungle full of like about 3.5, 4 feet of snow. We were going dipping to this, and at 3 hour mark, out of the blue, there's this bhotia dog, massive Tibetan bhotia dog appears from nowhere. I'm like, ये कहाँ से आ गया?
Oh my God.
And he guides us. But this dog guides us to the top of Hatu Peak. And it's, we reach the top of Hatu Peak. It's like me, Dipti, and the Bhotia dog next to us sitting.
It's incredible.
And it was like, for me, it was out of the world feeling. For the first time, I was no longer worrying about future or no longer worrying about pondering over these mistakes in past. I was in that microsecond moment, like everything had melted away. Everything had frozen was this microsecond moment, and I was able to stay alive in that moment. This is good. I want to feel like this for the rest of my life. And after that, we came home, and I thought, I'm such a passionate technologist. Maybe, and I was in the startup world back then as well, creating like, we had just received our $40 million C funding, and it was great. It was like, I'm building this organization, and it was so awesome. And I went to work, and I just didn't feel like that. And I'm like, this is such a downer. Like, I'm so passionate about technology all my life. I wrote my first piece of code in 1993. I'm such a passionate guy, and I
Yeah,
can't
this is
feel any
what you've
passion.
done your whole life. That's
I'm like, I can't feel that passion that I felt on the top of that mountain
in one trip.
in one trip. And so then I'm like, let's let's see, for a few days. And I never felt like that. And I'm like, maybe I should go back to the mountains again. So I,
It
on
it called you, kept calling you.
on a whim, I just decided to go to the mountains. And every single time, it's not like I had to make it to the top. I think once I was there, once I was walking, I was in the moment.
Just the feeling.
Just that you're not, it's just one step after another. I'm like, this is it. You know what? It's okay. I'm a passionate technologist and everything, but I'm falling in love with mountains. And I feel like a certain kind of calling here. I think 1.5 years of doing small trips like this, few trips with even Dipti. Then I thought I have to see the tallest mountain of the world. Like, I have to go see Everest. And so I signed up for this trip to go to Everest Base Camp. I'm like, I have the money, I have the time. Let's just do it now. Like, who knows what will happen 20 years down the line. So I landed in Kathmandu, took this short flight to Lukla, like the gateway to Mount Everest. I still remember October of 2010, we landed in Lukla and everyone's clapping for the pilot. There's like, only 10 people in the plane and everyone's clapping for the pilot. I'm like, why are you clapping? It's like flights crash here regularly. So if we land like we are alive, I'm like, okay, let's clap. I'm alive.
It starts there.
And that's how the adventure started. And for the next 10 days, I have to tell you, some of the most magical scenery that I have ever seen in my, like, till then I'd ever seen in my life. It The mountains in the Everest Valley are so in your face. They are so jumbo. They are so majestic. You literally feel so tiny. The perspective shift you get there is so immense. And so then walking through and just awing at the beauty every day, we reached Everest Base Camp. But that was the most anticlimactic moment. I'm like, I'm here to see Everest, and I can't see Everest from Everest Base Camp. I'm like, this is not cool. Like, I made all this trip and I can't see the mountain at all. But luckily my team had made like a small detour where we were going to get great vantage point of Everest. So we went to this mountain called Pumori. Pumori is known as the daughter of Everest, and it's diagonally opposite of Everest. So
So you get a straight
you
view.
get an amazing view. So we were that evening, we were camped at Pumori Base Camp, and we were in the dining tent, chit chatting, sharing some stories, and eating some nice, vegan food. We had good vegan
Vegan
food there.
food
There was
at
good
base
vegan
camp?
food at base camp. So one of the days they had even made like a vegan sushi for me.
Wow.
Like, this was, like rice, sticky rice and some veggies and, wrapped with like a seaweed. So at Pumori Base Camp in 2010, I had like
But
vegan
they knew
sushi.
this. They knew the concept of
They
vegan
knew, they knew.
food,
It was a
plant-based food.
Canadian team. So they were
Okay.
a little,
Okay.
well versed with what, and I was also teaching them quite a bit. Like, I had written a long list for them. No dairy, no this, no this, no this, no this, and like
What
stuck
is he
on.
gonna eat? Yeah.
So like life was good that evening. And then this Sherpa guy started shouting my name. And in the mountains, if someone's shouting your name, it's almost always never good. So I was like so super tense. I quickly ran out and he's like, turn around and look at Everest. So I turned around. It was about evening time. The last rays of sunset were falling directly on Everest. Everest is this massive range, okay? Everest, like, if you look Everest from Pumori Base Camp, you would think this is not the tallest mountain in the world. Like, there's on the right, there's a mountain called Noopse. On the left, there are many other mountains, and they all, from a perspective, look taller than Everest. But you know that Everest is the taller mountain, right? Because you're looking at it from a certain angle. So it's like literally engulfed by this massive range around it. But when the sunset happens, every other mountain was in the color of gray, blue, black. But in between, that small black rock was burning golden in color. Like someone had put the whole mountain on fire. Like, all the snow was on fire. And when I saw Everest that way, I truly fell in love. Like, that Shah Rukh Khan dialogue, I don't know whose dialogue, Pehli nazar mein, pyar ho gaya. And for me, it was like genuinely love at first sight with Everest. Like deep love with Everest. I'm like, as much as it seems impossible right now for me to get to the top of Everest,
One day I'm gonna.
one day I'm going to get to the top. Mountain willing, of course. One day I'm going to get there. And I think that's where the whole journey kind of started.
The decision was made in that moment?
In that moment. Like I literally went in, and my first question to Tim Rippel, the expedition leader, I'm like, Tim, what's the secret behind climbing Everest? Like Tim, like I think he thought for a second and he's like, Kuntal, to climb to the top of the world, you will need a top of the world mind and a top of the world body. And it was very abstract answer at that point. I'm like, what does top of the world body mean? What does top of the world mind mean? But over the course of next many years, I went on to build that in my context, my top of the world body, my top of the world
In your
mind,
reference.
in my context. So that is where the whole Everest bit kind of started, where I came home and I told everyone that I'm climbing this mountain. Like my wife still rues that day because she's like, you didn't fall in love with me, you fell in love with an, piece of, inanimate rock. And like, on the list, it's like, okay, first is Everest, second is your work, third is your parents. Like, okay, I'm like literally
Where
now
does she
fifth or
come?
sixth priority. I'm like, okay. So, but I fell in love with Everest. Honestly, it got to a point where a lot of people dissuaded me. Don't go.
Dangerous. Life
Dangerous. You'll
threatening.
get killed. You lose fingers. You lose toes.
Valid fears, I think.
All valid fears. Family was okay.
Yeah.
But I think
Family
it
was
was
okay.
mostly a lot of external people who were like, don't go. And it was like, you are Gujarati. You are a Kachi. You are obese. You are unhealthy.
Were you obese
I was
at
about
that point?
110 kilos back then. Uh, I had no intent, right? I was a tourist. I had trained 6 months for Everest Base Camp. So luckily I had improved my fitness quite a bit by then. But still, I was not fit. Like people wouldn't look at me and say, "Ye banda Everest climb karne wala hai." So I was like in that state. So a lot of people just dissuading me from going. But imagine your life. You wake up in the morning. The only thing you can think of is Everest. You sit for your breakfast and you see Everest in your plate. You turn on the computer screen, you see Everest in your computer screen.
The obsession.
You sleep in the night, all your dreams are about climbing Everest. Everything is about climbing Everest. And as I told you earlier in the podcast, that I'm someone who's like a little bit more on the extreme side. So for
You
me,
went all in.
I went all in. Like I can't, like, it was the deepest calling. Like I can't undo that calling. Like there was nothing in, I didn't have a way to undo the calling. Like this had consumed me. I'm not saying people should do this, right? Like I want to make a disclaimer that everything I'm saying is in my context, right? I'm not giving out any prescriptions or advice here to anyone that you should live your life this way. I lived my life this way. I'm happy. But it was tough. Those first few months were extremely tough because I just couldn't fathom my life without Everest. And on the other hand, I was just newly married and I had my dad who was afflicted with Lewy body dementia and he was totally, bedridden, and I had to take care of him. And there was this company that I was building out and all this stuff that was going on, but I couldn't fathom my
And
life.
shake that
I
away.
have to go to climb this mountain. There's no, like, I can't, that's my life. This is not my life. Like,
So was
I,
it almost like you living in two different bodies and having two different experiences at the same time, like parallel
so,
realities?
so but I had to find a balance there because I am also a person who, I, I think I'm someone who likes taking on response. Like, for example, if you have a family, you have to take care of your family. Just as simple as that. Everyone has to find that balance within their chaos, is what I feel.
Yeah.
Because everyone's life is chaos. Like, if someone comes and tells me, "Mera life chaos nahi hai," they are just outright lying. I can, definitely say.
Or not living up to their full potential.
So, ye tha, and the goal was, I was still, the Everest was the priority, right? I was that Ghoda who had blinders on, and I had to climb Everest, and I had to build that top of the world body. I had to build that top of the world mind, and around that, everything had to be built. So when I went in 2016 and I climbed Everest, I climbed it on an entirely vegan diet.
Okay.
But when I was standing on the top of Everest, I was still wearing a suit made of down feathers. And if you don't know how down feathers are made from the feathers of a slaughtered duck. Now, no duck is going to come up to you and say, "Hey, take my feathers, go climb Everest, do whatever you want to do," right? Most of the ducks, they are just taken by their necks. The necks are broken and their feathers are just taken from them. And these are stuffed into jackets that are then built that can climb to the top of Everest.
Right. Were you
Okay,
aware of this process of how down jackets are made before?
I was very much aware of this process. And starting from 2012, I had started writing to various gear companies all across the world. Like everyone from a North Face to a Mountain Hardware to a Rab to a PhD Designs to Primaloft, which also is one of the synthetic insulation pioneers. So I'd written to all of those folks. I even reached out to PETA in New York. Their headquarters is in New York. And I knew that North Face headquarters is right next to PETA. So I'm like, can't you just go next door,
Ask
convince
them
them,
about it. Yeah.
convince them to build a jacket for me? And actually, they said that, okay, we are not going to give you money to climb Everest, like Peter said this, but we can definitely help you out with this. So they actually did organize a meeting with North Face. They did go and put my proposal to North Face, but North Face got back to them saying that, hey, this can't be done. There's literally one human being on the planet asking for this. Right? This is not financially viable. The amount of money that would take for research and development of this product is going to be enormous, and there's no market for this.
You think so? Did you believe that there was no market for it and you were the only one asking for it, or you were the only one vocal about?
I think I was the only one vocal about it at that point, and as far as I remember, back in 2012, I don't know, I didn't know of any other vegan mountaineers who were trying to climb Everest, or I didn't know of any other vegan mountaineers who were trying to climb Everest to this level, right? So it's also about, hey, I want to climb Everest, but no one was thinking really about their jackets.
Right.
Like I was like, if I have to be a vegan, right, it can't just be what is on my plate. It also has to be about what is on my body. It also has to be about everything I do, right? Even things like my toothpaste has to be vegan, my wet wipe has to be vegan, every right, it's not also about this. It's like, is my toothpaste tested on animals? Is my wet wipe tested on animals? Are the products that I'm using on Everest tested on animals, right? Even that stuff shouldn't happen.
You took care of all of that.
So
You
I'm like,
went
I want to
into
be vegan end to end. Like I can't just go there, and because I also wanted to claim the record.
the two climbs that you did, the second one, the first one you said you did on a vegan diet, knowing you were wearing a down jacket. So that wasn't vegan gear. But tell me about the journey second time around.
So as I was explaining to you that I wrote in 2012 and I tried convincing companies all across the world that, hey, you need to build a vegan suit for me. So let me explain this suit. Every single climber who makes it to the summit of Mount Everest, maybe Sherpa climber or maybe a climber like me, will wear this Himalayan suit. This
What's a Himalayan suit?
It's a one-piece suit that covers your entire body, and it saves your life in temperatures of minus 60 degrees Celsius, winds up to 100 kilometers per hour. It's like the single most crucial piece of gear that you takes you to the top of Everest and keeps you safe. So this was a showstopper for me at some point. And so I wrote in 2012, everyone said no. I wrote in 2013, everyone said no. 2014, everyone said no. 15, everyone said no. Finally, it was time for me to go to climb Everest. And it's almost as if like I was constantly battling with myself. Like I'll go climb Everest, but literally the photo of my summit is going to have dead animal on my body. This is going to be like the worst thing ever. But I'm like, but I will be able to still debunk a lot of myths. Like people will know that vegans can do this, vegans can climb
At
Everest.
least on a vegan diet.
So I'm like, I was constantly jostling between the two, and I decided to go for it. And I summited Everest and I came back down safely. But honestly, after I came back down, I lost my sleep quite a bit. I lost my peace of mind quite significantly because I was invited to many podcasts. I was invited to many talks. I was invited all across the world. And all these news articles about me and all these blogs about
World's
me.
first vegan mountaineer.
First vegan mountaineer in the world. Like every time a talk person invited me on the stage to give the talk, here's the first vegan in the world to climb Everest. And I would go on the top and I'd be like, I'm not the first vegan. Oh shit, man. This is so bad.
Wow. So it's almost like shame, guilt, not
So
wanting
much
to
internally,
associate
right?
with
I'm
that.
still not
Yeah.
saying it outside, right? I'm like, internally, I'm like, this is not accurate. I didn't do it as a vegan, right? Because that piece of suit that I wore was still made from feathers of slaughtered geese. I can't call myself a vegan if I'm holding others to a higher standard. If I'm telling, oh, this guy is, claiming to be the first vegan in the world, but then he eats honey. And I'm saying that he eats honey, but I'm not holding myself to the same standard that I'm holding him to, right? I need to start holding myself to the same standard. I'm like, no, no, no. This, like, there was too much turmoil, too much guilt. And I'm like, I have to stop feeling sorry. I have to do something about it, right? Like, you can feel guilty and, get into this, mindset of just, getting depressed and becoming negative, or you find a solution for it.
Yeah, but sometimes it's also like if you're the only one, like North Face told you, it's one individual asking for it,
Right.
So you're also going against a system that doesn't make it easy for you to be vegan.
But I didn't want to give up, right? So I'm like, what's the harm in writing? I'm anyways used to say answer, hearing no from everyone. It will be more no's.
You didn't give up. That didn't deter you.
It didn't deter me. So I'm like, here's my thought process. If I don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. If I ask, now the probability shifts to 50-50. The
You have
answer can be
nothing to
no, the
lose.
answer can be yes. I'm like, let's ask. Answer has always been no. Nothing will change. That's the worst case scenario, which is anyway status quo. So I started writing again. And then someone reaches out to me and says, hey, why don't you connect with Save the Duck? So I got into their Facebook Messenger and I write. I'm like, if I ask them for money, they will, be like, they will shoo me away. If I ask them for a suit, they will shoo me away.
What is Save the Duck? Do you want to tell us a little bit?
So Save the Duck is one of the pioneers of synthetic clothing on the planet. They create outdoor activewear for cold climates. So everything from jackets to beanies to everything that will keep you warm in cold climatic regions. And their concept is to bring in fashion into this world. Right? If you look at all the North Face jackets, they are so bland. The colors are so bland. They look like, there's no fashion in that. So they wanted to bring fashion into this world, but yet keep the warmth and the function there.
So make it functional, cooler, aspirational, glamorous at the same time. All of it.
So they were that company, and I'm like, they anyways don't make mountaineering gear. I'm like, all I can do is, why don't I ask them for 5 kgs of the insulation material?
What was the insulation material?
They have something called Plume Tech, which is their proprietary insulation, which is created from plastic.
Recycled plastic.
From recycled plastic. So all the fishing nets that you see, the pet bottles that you see, so all of that is recycled and created into insulation. They also use some virgin plastic also for creating this insulation. So this was the insulation material and it was proprietary technology. I thought, why can't they just send me 5 kgs of this? And then I have a tailor in Kathmandu who will build the suit for me. I'm like, this is it. This is the holy grail now. If I pursue them, I will, get the suit. They got back to me saying, we are very interested in your project. We would like to get on a phone call with you. So within minutes, I was on a phone call with their chief marketing officer.
That was the first yes you've ever received.
First yes I had ever received in my life. And then she spoke to me, she understood the project, and I was constantly saying, I need the 5 kg insulation. She's like, we'll build you the suit. And I'm like, but I don't like trust you guys. Like, no one is, said yes, and you are suddenly, are coming out of the blue and saying you'll build the suit for me. And within days, I was in a phone call with the chief designer of the company, and we were discussing how we would build the suit and what it would take. 8 months later, as I was climbing another 8,000-meter mountain called Lhotse, which is the 4th tallest mountain in the world, it is right opposite Everest. On April 27th, a helicopter lands at the base camp, and there's a parcel for me. And I'm at the base camp. And I open the parcel and there's a suit for me. And I'm like, whoa, what happened? And I wore the suit and I'm like, this is it, man. I'm going to be on top of Everest. Like, finally, I'm going to do it. But there was still a bit of a problem because this suit had never been tested in less than -5 degrees.
Less than -5?
5 degrees.
And what's the lowest temperature that
-50.
-50.
So it's like no one has tested this suit before. It's entirely new. Literally, I am going to be the lab rat or the guinea pig. But I'm like, you know what?
You were okay with being there?
I'm okay. I was okay. Having made that decision to wear that dead animal on my body, I think like that weighed in on my mind quite a bit. I'm like, and for the first time I also thought, all those lab animals that are, tested on, maybe it's time for, me to also face the music. Let's just, put the suit and, go test it.
You thought of yourself as the lab
I thought
animal.
of myself as the lab animal. Honestly, there's no one else to test the suit. Right? I am the only person in the world demanding it. Then I get it. And then I can't shy away from, saying, okay, I can't make an excuse. So I'm like, let's, be smart about it as well. If the suit doesn't work, we'll bail and go home. We'll try again.
You
Right.
were
So
willing to do that.
I was willing to do that. So I'm like, I am not, to a point where I dumped my down feather suit at the base camp. And to make like things, crystal clear, I donated that suit. Like, so I gave
Just completely gave it
I'm like,
away.
I'm just going to give the suit a tip to a Sherpa so that I can't take it back. Right? You can't take a tip back from someone. Oh, I gave to it. Can I get it back? Oh, no one takes a tip back. Okay. So I'm like, let's just make it super clear for myself.
All in.
All in. But a calculated risk, right? If I at some point in my journey thought that this suit was not warm enough, then just get out, go home, right? There's more opportunity to iterate and come back again. But honestly, May 15th, 2018, I stood on summit of Lhotse, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was cozy and warm in that suit. And right in front of me was Everest, right? Like stone throw away. No, not,
no, no,
not
not a
literally.
literal stones. Yeah.
But it was like super close, right? Like I could literally see, like I literally felt that I should come down and climb to the Everest. Like I didn't have the money back then.
That determination.
So I came back home and I spoke to Save the Duck CEO and said, look, I want to climb Everest now. And he's like, I'll give you the money. Go climb it next year. And 2019, I came back to climb Everest.
I love that support.
And yeah, they have been like steadfast in their support since July of 2017. This is 2023. I'm still their ambassador. I haven't climbed anything, and yet I'm their ambassador. And my Sherpa guide, Mingma Tenzi Sherpa, who has been with me in this entire journey, is also their ambassador. And for everyone, he has now climbed 10 out of 14 8,000-meter mountains in the world wearing Save the Duck suit. If he climbs the rest of the four, he will become the first human on the planet to climb all 14 8,000 meters without wearing a dead animal on the body. He's not a vegan, but at least from a clothing perspective, from that suit perspective, he will break all the myths that are there on this planet. So I'm rooting for him. I can't do it,
I'm rooting for
unfortunately.
him. Everyone's rooting for him.
So I look forward. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to climb with him again, perhaps on one of the mountains where I accompany him. We'll see how things go.
Is that impact for you? Have other vegan mountaineers reached out to you? Do you think you've inspired other journeys knowingly, unknowingly, whether that's in terms of clothing or diet for that matter?
So definitely from a diet perspective, going back to my activism point, this is where I found my activism. When I started climbing mountains, I started realizing all these people who were turned off by me, by my in the face activism, suddenly were in my DMs asking me, what do you eat? How do you train? And I realized that if they are asking the question and I give the same answer that I was giving before, they are way more receptive to it. I'm like, what is
Because
going
it's
on?
results, it's action. You're doing something that I think conventionally hasn't been done before on the
With
kind of diet with the kind of equipment that you're wearing. So absolutely. Was there no use of leather, not in your like gloves?
no use of leather, nothing, nowhere, no use of leather, no use of wool, no use of down. In 2016, when I submitted Everest, there was, of course, down on my body. And towards the end, my gloves malfunctioned. So I had to wear leather gloves that my Sherpa was wearing.
What were your gloves made of? The vegan gloves. What were they made
Not
of?
in 2016. They was the outer material was leather free, but inside material was still down. But in 2018, when I submitted Lhotse, I created my own mittens.
You
So
created your own
So
mittens.
this is a story that is not shared a lot anywhere. I have not shared because suit is the bigger piece and it is like in your face. But if you see in my photo, I have a mittens on my hand, and those mittens were created by me and a tailor in Kathmandu.
The
Uh,
same tailor you wanted to build the suit with.
the same
Yeah.
tailor that I wanted to build the suit with. I'm like, I have asked Save the Duck for my suit.
Yeah.
If I now say that please build my
Give
mittens,
me
they'll
3
be like,
kgs to
okay,
inspiration.
bye, thank you. It was great working with you.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can do this on my own. So I built the mittens on my own. So I used those mittens in 2018. I used those mittens in 2019. Fortunately, now there is a guy in Mumbai who makes vegan mittens that can go on top of Everest. So at least that there's been one piece of progress. So I'm hoping that is an inspiration from me where
Yeah. But what did you do with your tailor? What fabric material did you use for your vegan mittens?
it was entirely nylon and inside was all virgin PET created insulation. So it was just whatever locally was available. the local in synthetic insulation, we took 16 layers of that and we put in 16 layers. And I'm like, just make whatever you want to make. I don't want to lose fingers. It can be unfunctional as F. I will make it work. And it was unfunctional as F because I would hold the rope and I would slide. I would hold the rope and I would slide. I'm like, I am going to make it to the top. My fingers are not, getting cut.
I love
And
that.
they didn't get cut because my fingers were super cozy and super warm.
So you would move mountains for veganisms, and you wouldn't let that shake
I would
you.
do anything for veganism. If moving mountains I had to do, I will do it. I'll do anything
Which
for
you did.
veganism. I'm pretty sure you would too, right? I'm sure pretty much every vegan, who's, passionate about it would do it. So this is my bit, right? Like this is my bit, my contribution back to the community. But this is where I've found my activism space is where instead of me being in people's space, I think just sharing information and breaking myths and, just telling people that, hey, it can be done.
Do you think people ever dissuaded you from a vegan protein, nutrition, fitness point of view that, oh, you're vegan, how are you going to do this without consuming some sort of either animal protein or some kind of non-vegan protein?
So when I announced that I'm now climbing Everest as a vegan, or I started talking to my Canadian operator, or some of the other operators that I was kind of considering that I would like to go with them on Everest, or just starting to build out the plan, right? Like I'm an engineer, so at the end of the day, I like reverse engineering things. So I like, okay, Everest is a project. It is going to take me 5 years. What is going to happen? I need to start doing these things. So I started talking to a lot of these companies, and what I quickly realized from these companies is that they were all telling massive pushback, massive. Like they would literally send me, here's the URL of our nutrition, our dietitian or our registered dietitian, that this is the diet you would need to follow to get ready for Everest.
And what did that look like?
And I think most of the diet was very heavy on meat, was very heavy on eggs, was very heavy on, like, especially for example, if I looked at the mountain diet itself, the mountain diet was very heavy on dry meat, like, beef jerky and things like that. A lot of cheese that people were consuming, a lot of butter that they were consuming, things like spam and everything. And I'm like, who eats spam? I mean, uh, all sorts of, basically all sorts of meat and animal products were there on the menu. Yes, there were, of course, okay, eat the veggies and eat the fruits, the regular
But
standard
in
advice,
smaller quantities, I
right?
guess.
Or eat whatever, like just eat enough. But it was still very meat and egg heavy and like dairy heavy.
Did that
So
ever change your mind? Did that ever made you question the fact that you're going to do this entirely on vegan diet? Was there ever a moment where you internally questioned it?
simple answer, no,
Never.
never. I was two things. I was very clear in my mind that if I'm going to climb Everest, it will have to be as a vegan or I will not do it at all. So that one
That was
piece
clear.
that was very clear. Super, like, veganism changed my life. There's nothing that's ever going to, like, world can end. I'm not going to end my veganism. Like, it's that level, of. I remember a few years ago, a very reputed institute, yoga institute, invited me for a talk. Hey, come and give a talk to our entire audience. And we were discussing the modulus and everything, for the talk. And they were like, we just have one request. Don't talk about veganism. I said FO and I kept the phone.
Wow.
That is pretty much what I did. So
Okay.
veganism and Kuntal Joisher can't be separated.
So they're
As,
non-negotiable.
as simple as that. But the second thing, the rational part of my brain was also, if they are saying that I need to eat meat, essentially they are saying I need to eat protein. If they are saying I need to eat eggs, they are saying that I need to eat some protein and some essential fats.
Your brain bifurcated that.
Right.
Translated that language to.
Correct. If they are saying that I need to drink milk, they are saying I need some protein and some calcium. And as far as, okay, I'm an engineer, which means I can look at science, I can look at evidence, I can look at literature, I can
Break down
read books, I
facts.
can, know. One thing I can tell you, today I'm also a nutrition coach. And 14, 15 years of serious, study of the nutrition world, I can tell you that plants have all the nutrition that humans of all ages, right from 0 to 100, can consume to not just survive but thrive.
Absolutely, because the animals that most humans eat, they thrive on plant-based
They
diet
they
as
thrive
well.
on
So
plant-based
that's where
diet.
they get their nutrition
And so
from.
someone will, come and say that a lion doesn't thrive on a plant-based diet, but a lion is thriving on perhaps a deer or someone who is eventually thriving on a plant-based diet.
The food chain and the food cycle, you're just cutting it down.
All of us are eating a plant-based diet directly or indirectly. Might as well just eat it directly. So we can get into that conversation. But I kind of looked at that and I'm like, it's a no-brainer. It like they are saying I need to eat meat, but I'm definitely sure there are enough protein sources in the vegan world. Till then, my diet was not very focused. So I just had to be a little better planned, right? So I had to be a better planned. I had to be better prepared. But that comes with any big, massive endeavor that you take in life, right? Maybe it may be climbing Everest or creating a startup or doing anything in life that requires that commitment and preparation. You're not going to succeed without that. So I'm like, okay, this is all is there. Let's just, chart out my diet. And I said, maybe I also need some professional help. So one of my colleagues in my US company, his wife was a very famous, is still a very famous blogger and a nutritionist. It's a blog called Happy Herbivore. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, can you really help me out? I'm climbing Everest. And she was like super happy. She's like, I'll do it for free for you because I know you and you're doing this, cool thing. I really
Mission
want.
aligned.
So like she looked at what I was eating and she got back to me saying, hey, you can improve it this way. So, like try it out and see how things go.
So small changes.
Just so honestly, it wasn't rocket science. I was able to use that diet. And today, like I can say a lot of things in hindsight. It's been 14 years now. If I have to list down the top 100 challenges that I faced in my Everest or currently I'm doing the 7 summits, which is climbing the 7 tallest mountain on the 7 continents. I finished 5 continents as a vegan.
As a
So
fully vegan
fully,
diet, vegan clothing,
right.
all of it.
So if I have to list down top 100 challenges I had, vegan diet would not be the 101st challenge on that list. Okay, so it was that non-issue. But I also had to prove to myself that this is truly a non-issue.
Yeah. And then
So
that it can be done the same capacity at the same level that a non-vegan would
a
do.
non-vegan. So right after October of 2010, when I came home, I started training properly because it's not just about your diet. It's about your training. It's about your recovery. It's about your diet. It's about a holistic lifestyle that you live that is going to help you build that top of the whole mind and body. So in July 2012, I submitted my first 20,000 feet peak, and I did that as 100% vegan. And that was surely, I just wanted to prove to myself that this can be done. And since then, I have never looked back.
What about your recovery being on a plant-based diet? Because that's something that people question. Your energy levels or, the time that it takes for your body to heal and recover. Was that ever something that crossed your mind? Or how did your body cope with that?
So, first of all, I can't compare myself to a previous me that ate non vegetarian food because I never ate non vegetarian food, right? But I can compare myself to a previous me who was a junk food vegan to someone who was a smarter vegan. Right? So that's the comparison I can make.
What's the difference between a junk vegan and a smart
Right? Like
vegan?
a junk vegan would be someone who would not like think about how their diet is set up, right? Like would just eat anything. Like eat a pav vada, pav bhaji, pizza, vada pav. I mean, whatever, right? Like, they're not like so worried whether my protein intake is getting taken care of, whether I'm eating enough veggies, I'm eating enough fruits, I'm eating enough nuts, I'm eating enough micronutrition, I'm taking care of my B12, D3, whole host of things. Like you're thinking about it a lot deeper instead. Jo bhi milega khaunga. That is not the mentality. So that is the mentality before. But once I decided to climb Everest, I shifted to including more whole foods into my diet, including more minimally processed foods, while keeping some room for fun foods and everything.
What did that look like? What did your diet consist of most?
A significant chunk of my diet was composed of a lot of veggies, both cooked and uncooked, a lot of fruits, because fruits have like, good amount of calories and good amount of carbs that would fuel an endurance athlete. So that a lot of legumes, so a lot of dals and a lot of rajma, chole, all hosts of those things. A fair amount of nuts and seeds, a fair amount of dry fruits as well, a fair amount of tofu. Back then, tempeh was not readily available. Tofu was still, reasonably well available in India. So a lot of tofu, a lot of soy milk, um, and occasional. Back then, I was not too high on protein powder, but occasional bits of protein powder back then. So this is what my diet looked like, and ensuring that my B12 and D3 supplementation was happening. This is
How did you get your B12 and D3
from
in that diet?
supplements,
From supplements. Okay.
from
Do you
supplements,
still get them from supplements?
from supplements, and I tell every vegan curious or anyone who's aspiring vegan or anyone who's also a vegan for a long period of time, get your levels tested, both vitamin B12 and D3. If the levels are low, ensure that you supplement and bring them up and keep them high. Right? You don't want people to come back to you and say, because you are a vegan, look, this is all stuff is happening to you. Right? Don't do this.
Did you ever hear that about soy milk and estrogen and all that as well, being a guy in this space? Because there are a lot of misconceptions around eating a lot of soy.
Right. Look, if you are going to drink 5 liters of soy milk a day and like eat 1 kilo of tofu every day, you have other problems in life. Okay. Man boobs is going to be last of your problems, honestly. Honestly, if you eat that much paneer and that much milk, you will have 10x more problems, in your life. So I feel as long as you are eating a balanced diet
In moderation.
in moderation, right? Like you're eating a block of tofu a day, perhaps eating, drinking a glass or two of soy milk regularly, in addition to other sources of protein and micronutrition and macronutrition, right? So as part of a very well-rounded diet, like if your entire day is soy protein shake, tofu, tempeh, drinking soy milk and not eating any veggies, not eating anything else, not eating the dals, that is not a smart diet anyway, right? It would not be a smart diet in any facet of diet, like, nutrition world that you have to think of. So I think people, when they talk about estrogen and all of those things, they simply haven't looked at the literature at all. Like there was recently a meta-analysis that looked at testosterone in men after, and a meta-analysis is analysis of like 20, 25, 30 different studies, right? So it is looking at overall body of evidence. They saw that there was no difference in testosterone. Okay, testosterone didn't plummet at all in men after significant consumption of soy.
And that's proven.
And
Yeah.
I have now been eating. Now I don't know. I don't like anecdotes, but I'm going to give mine. Okay. Disclaimer: I don't like anecdotes at all. But I have been eating soy for 21 years now. 21 years now. I just did my testosterone. I'm 43 years old. My testosterone was 791. The higher limit is 836.
836.
So I am at 791. I am
Which is normal.
way higher than your typical average. Right? Most typical average would be around 500 to 550. And I'm way higher than them. And I consume significant amount of soy. Been doing for 21 years, right? So I'm not going to use my case as, okay, hey, look, I'm eating so much soy. My testosterone should have plummeted for sure. It has not. My mountain performance has not plummeted. It's, all pretty reasonable. So I think it is about moderation and overall well-rounded, well-balanced diet that truly matters, and not, these small bits and pieces. Eat quinoa, it's a superfood. Yeah, eat quinoa, but eat other things also, right? Like you can't just like eat in this way. So that's the idea, where there was so much pushback, but I knew that I had to do it. And as I said, that it was not a challenge that people were making it out to be, honestly. Like I haven't really had to think about vegan diets so much on my mountaineering climb. May it be Everest in 2016, may it be Everest in 2019. This was honestly a non-issue. No, I never thought about it. Never thought about it. Just eat roti, sabzi, dal, rice, parathas, and tofu, and all the stuff that was made at base camp, and whole host of dry fruits and
Yeah.
lots of Oreo cookies.
Yeah, Oreos are vegan. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah.
Oreos are vegan for sure. So yeah. So
I think we sometimes overcomplicate veganism as well, right? Our day-to-day diet, this a simple Indian diet that is vegan that we're not aware of. So we make plant-based to be this whole fancy gamut of foods almost, which it's not. Like you
it's
said,
not.
roti, sabzi, dry fruits. So because you mentioned briefly the diet that you consumed, if there's any mountaineers or athletes out there trying to do this on a plant-based diet, trying to do this on a vegan diet, what advice would you give someone?
So first of all, I'll say that, as you also pointed out, that don't complicate it. It is super simple. So for example, I'm not going to give you prescriptions here. I'm going to kind of talk about what I eat.
Yeah, and what worked for you?
So what I do is I have a diet where I cook some foods on my own, and then for rest of the foods I'll just eat from what is made at home. Like my home is a very simple home where they'll make roti, sabzi, dal, rice for a couple of meals, and then for breakfast they'll make something like a poha, upma or something. Now for my breakfast, usually for the last 13 or 14 years I have done a single breakfast, which is a smoothie. That smoothie has undergone many variations, but for the last 5 years, I've just had the same smoothie every single day.
What's the current version?
The current version is rolled oats mixed with a banana, mixed with 1.5 or maybe 2 scoops of protein powder.
What protein powder do you use generally? A vegan protein powder?
Honestly,
that you
any
recommend?
any vegan protein powder
Okay.
that fits your pocket and fits your flavor, buy it, and from a reputable company. I'm not like I will switch them often. So I'm not going to like say, which protein powder.
Sure.
A protein powder, and then a whole host of nuts and seeds, a lot of like spinach, and perhaps some plant milk. Most of the times I'll like use soy milk. And so I'll just take all of this, I'll mix it up, and I'll put it in the fridge in the night. And my sister also eats the same thing. My wife also eats the same thing. And my daughter, who's a 4-year-old vegan, she doesn't eat the same thing, but she eats a flavor of the same, like a version of this. And so I make all the 4 bowls ready in the night and I put it in the fridge. It hardly takes me 10 minutes to prepare 4 bowls. And then the next morning, I just blend my stuff. Like I'll of course add spinach on the top. Like I will not like put the spinach in the night.
Right.
But
So
I
that
like,
comes fresh and you
yeah,
blend
it's
it first
fresh.
thing in the morning.
I just blend it. And if you look at the overall meal, oats and banana will give you a lot of complex and simple carbs and a whole host of fiber. Protein powder, of course, is just to give me enough protein. Then I have the nuts and seeds to give me essential fats, some protein, some micronutrients, and a whole host of fiber. And then again, soy milk is also fortified, so I also get some multivitamins and minerals along with some added protein. So it's an overall very balanced dish that I start my morning with. As soon as I get to my lunch, it's mostly whatever sabzi is made at home, I'll take the sabzi. If dal is made at home, I'll take the dal. Occasionally, I'll also eat the roti or the thepla or whatever is made at home, I'll take that. And then on the side, I will have like a giant ass salad. Like you can't imagine. Like most people, when they eat their salads, it's like a small plate or it's perhaps a bowl of this size. I will have produce which is like almost a kilo.
So that's your main course. Salad is not a side meal for you.
It's not a side meal for me. It's like massive jumbo salad and diversity of vegetables, right? Whatever I will get on a local, bhaji wala, I'll just take everything. I'll like just put that in a little bit of dressing if I can make one myself, or maybe just something on the top, maybe a little tahini or something, or maybe if I made vegan yogurt at home, I'll just throw that
You
in.
make vegan yogurt at home?
I make vegan yogurt
Yeah.
at home.
Peanuts?
Soy.
Soy. Okay.
Soy. I'm like a little bit more fan of soy because of the higher protein content. So it's also a little suitable for like my daughter who's 4-year-old.
And you're raising your child vegan as well.
She's vegan. She has been vegan since inception. So she's, full on vegan. Yeah. So typically, and then I'll throw in some tofu in my salad. So again, it's a pretty balanced meal. Occasionally there'll be some chole made at home. Then, that will also bring in some additional protein into my diet.
So good
Now-
amount of carbs, good amount of fiber, good amount of nutrients.
Everything. So again, my focus is at least 2 meals in a day need to be balanced. And then keep some fun foods towards the end of the day when I'm like ending the day. And then between my lunch and between my dinner, I will again like have a snack. And that snack typically tends to be a piece of fruit and a protein shake. Now,
Oreos? No Oreos?
no Oreos.
No Oreos.
Oreos only on the mountain, not in daily life. No,
Yeah.
like if you see this diet, there's no junk, there's no snacking at all in any of these meals. In the night also, if let's say my family has made vada pav, I am not going to eat the version of vada pav they have made. I will just take the potato
Without the fried.
without the fried. So I'll
dough
just
around
take directly the potato, the masala potatoes, and then perhaps I will have like a brown bread or anything that I have, and then I will just make like a maybe put some dressing in between, and then or a chutney if like a coriander chutney at home, and then I'll eat the vada pav in that. So it's like a little better version in my mind,
Or
right?
whatever's available. Yeah.
Whatever available. So this is how my day tends to be.
Now on the mountains?
On the mountains. On the mountains, it's all about calories, right? Because I need the calories to get through a day. To give you an example, a day of climbing to the summit of Everest, it starts at 9:30 in the night.
9:30 at night.
9:30 at night. And then maybe I'll summit at about 9:30 in the morning. From Camp 4 to the summit of Everest, I'll summit at 9:30 in the morning. That's 12 hours one way. Approximately in an hour, I'll burn around 500 to 700 calories. That's what 12 into 5 on the minimum side, maybe about 6 to 8, maybe 9,000 calories. And then to come back down another 4-5 hours. So another maybe, 3-4,000 calories. So you're talking about 11-12,000 calories in a single summit push. And we have many such days where we are going on the mountain for 12-13 hours. Right. So there's significant amount of calories that are required. And if I'm not putting those calories in my body, then I'm going to start losing a lot of my body mass, which is very important, right? And a climb of Everest is about 45 to 50 days. And so I need to eat a lot. And I am not on diet. Like if I'm consuming enough calories and just being smart about how I'm choosing my foods, then I don't have to worry about micronutrition. Then I don't have to worry about whether I'm getting enough fiber. Am I getting enough protein? So all I do is just I eat enough.
Okay. So
And
what's in a vegan mountaineer's backpack
uh,
in terms of food?
look, at the base camp, we have a full blown kitchen. So typically a breakfast would be a paratha, poha, upma, puri, sabzi,
Everything, whatever's available.
everything. Like it could even be French fries on occasional days. It could be like a dosa, like whatever. Like base camp, we have awesome kitchen, so we can literally just make anything we want, pancakes, whatever. But I will usually stick to like bread, parathas, poha, upma, and then perhaps a bowl of muesli with some plant milk, if like I'm able to like get it to the base camp. So something like this, so that there's ample of calories, ample of carbs, which is what I really need, a significantly higher carb diet, and then just enough of fats and protein. And fats, we just are nibbling on nuts all day long, so I really don't have to worry about my fat intake on the mountain as such. And then breakfast, lunch usually tends to be, especially for me, tends to be roti, sabzi, dal in some form or the other. It could have some salad on the side or those kind of things. And then night again tends to be a little bit more fun. So anything from a pizza to a pasta.
Yeah, vegan pizza at the base camp?
Vegan pizza at the base camp. I literally took vegan meat from here,
You
and
took vegan meat?
I took vegan meat, I took vegan cheese, and I made like a vegan pizza for myself. I made a vegan burger for myself. I made a whole host of things. Once I ran out of the patties, I made like vegan patties there at the base camp, and I ate vegan. So all sorts of these things. So just high calorie foods. I think once you go higher up the mountain, that's where a lot of challenges start.
What do you
So
do then?
uh, I would say you simplify. Like, so a lot of simpler foods, a lot of dry fruits. So dates, figs, lot of nuts, a lot of Indian snacks. Like I remember eating lots of bhujia sev on,
You
on
eating
Everest.
bhuja se?
It's super spicy. Not the best food, but
Yeah.
gives you a lot of calories on the mountain. But again, it's not like the main part. A lot of soups, honestly.
Dehydrated.
Dehydrated. So all we can do higher up the mountain is make hot water. That's all we can do. So either you can make soups or you can make dehydrated food. So you open it, you put hot water into it, and you seal it again, and after 20-30 minutes it's cooked and you eat those foods.
Did you get a lot of dehydrated vegan food?
It was easy. In 2016 it was a little tricky. So there is this company called Outdoor Herbivore in the US, and I wrote to them and said that, hey, look, I'm going on Everest. Can you like make like 1400, 1500 calorie meals for me in like a single packet? And they did some amazing pastas and some amazing quinoa dishes and some amazing stuff for me. So this was single small 250, 300 gram packet with like 1500 calories. So you would just put some hot water, seal it for half an hour, and it would be ready and you would just eat it. So this is like, so it was mostly
So
stuff
that
like this,
sustained you.
where what I did on the mountains.
Yeah. Was 2019 different in terms of food?
2019 was a lot different in terms of food, because what we had at the, so there are multiple base camps on the mountain, or there are multiple camps on the mountain. In addition to the base camp at almost 6500 meters, we had an advanced base camp which was as good as the base camp. And so we were able to cook a sufficient amount of food there and carry it up on the mountain, where at the last camp we were able to just like get the rotis and like put it on that like small burner stove and make rotis and eat rotis and make like parathas and like just heat the parathas and eat those things. So we were able to like change a little differently. And what I did was I took with me dehydrated poha packets. I'm like, what is my comfort food? What is it that I'm going to eat when
Even
things
if
are
you're eating it
totally
every
falling
single
apart?
day.
Like,
Yeah.
I can't think of anything. I'm like, definitely going to eat poha. So
So you
let's just
carried
take poha,
dehydrated poha.
dehydrated poha. So I'm like, it's easier to get in because you need the calories. It's like simple math up there. There's no like, you need the best calories, you need like nutritious calories. Doesn't matter.
Okay,
You
so
need the
would you
energy.
trade health for veganism, and in some aspects, like just because this was vegan and you were getting that, even if it's not nutritious, as long as you were getting the calories out of it, would you prioritize getting calories over health,
On the
nutrition?
mountain, 100%, yes. At sea level, Absolutely not, right? Like at sea level, I have to take care of my training, I have to take care of my body, I have to take care of my recovery. So that becomes a priority. On the mountains, just saving my life becomes a priority, right? So having the energy is super important.
Wherever you get it from.
Whatever I get it from,
Whatever plant-based source you get it
source
from.
I get it from.
Yeah.
As simple as that, yeah.
Okay. Please tell us about Kuntal 3.0 and what that looks like.
So after I came back from Everest twice, okay, now I have climbed the tallest mountain of the world twice. People still ask me the question, where do you get your protein from? So I'm like, I have been trying so hard to answer that question through my climbs. And if I can't answer this question, let's figure out how can I answer that question. So most people, okay, if you eat protein, then you'll build muscle. So people are like, protein with muscular people. I'm like, okay, what if I can become a bodybuilder? That would be so cool. Then people would never ask me that question, that where do you get your protein from? So I started looking up whether there are vegan bodybuilders. And of course there are. There are tons of vegan bodybuilders all across the world. I'm like, has any vegan bodybuilder climbed a mountain before? Or has any bodybuilder climbed a mountain before? I'm like, no, the answer is no.
You want to break that record as well.
So I'm like, let's just start looking at, I started talking to many coaches. Can mountaineering at this level, right? I'm not talking about climbing a day trek. Right? That's different. I'm like talking now climbing Everest and getting ready to that level. And then bodybuilding, where you are standing on stage of a competition, right? Open bodybuilding, natural, right? You're standing on the stage. You're not like with a poop physique, right? Like I want to be kick-ass, right? Like I want to be like shredded to 8% body fat.
Like
and
you
like,
said, you go all in, you go
right?
all out.
Like I can compete, right? Like with a poop physique also, I can just pay money and get on the stage and, do some poses and come down, right? That would be like, make me a laughing stock. I don't want to do that, right? I want to stand on a stage, like my veins popping out, striated glutes and like kick-ass physique, right? So I want to do
can
that.
see it. I can visualize it for you.
So can that person get down from the stage and within the next couple of months go and climb Everest? Is that possible? And answer everywhere was impossible. So anytime I hear the word impossible, I'm like, this has to be,
I have to do it.
Like,
I have to do
Like,
it.
at least I have to try.
It's calling me.
Right? Like the worst thing that would happen at the end of this journey is I'll have a great physique. I'll have done something that most would have never even thought of. And if I fail, it's okay. It's not so bad.
I love that mindset.
I'm like, in good space.
Is that what you think they meant when they told you top of the mind mindset and you need to have the top body?
Top of the world body. Look, I'm like the worst case scenario is I'll end up being in a great state. Right? I'm like, I'm going to do this. And if it's not hard, I'm not going to do it. Right? Like, what's the fun in doing things that are easy? And in some, like there's this dialogue in Dear Zindagi movie where Shah Rukh says that, Everest kabhi easy bhi hona chahiye. कभी easy ठीक है. अगर पूरे टाइम easy है ना, फिर मजा नहीं आएगा लाइफ में. So I'm like, अब मेरा Everest impossible की तरफ वापस, I have like, in going in that direction. So that's the goal, perhaps, maybe. I don't know how much time it will take, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I don't know.
You'll make it happen.
I want to do it. And so I want to show people that there can be a bodybuilder, that can be an endurance athlete, both in a single body, while eating vegan food, while wearing vegan gear. So that is the Kuntal 3.0. So I have started the journey. It has hit a few roadblocks. But what's life without roadblocks?
What
anyway?
roadblocks?
So roadblocks, like I'm starting to understand why people are saying it's impossible. So it's hard. It's freaking hard. Like you put in all this effort and build all this muscle. And then suddenly you go on a couple of expeditions and you lose all of it. I'm like, shit, man, I'm down to bare bones. And I put in all that hard work, ate all that food, put in all that hard work in the gym, and I go on the expedition and it's gone.
So despite all of these, roadblocks that you face, all these challenges that you face, what drives you? What pushes you to keep going despite the challenges, despite the hardships, despite everyone saying, no, you can't do this?
So, of course, there's the personal journey that I'm taking to climb the mountains or to do these things that are seemingly impossible and that I would like to achieve, and for my personal growth. And it's almost like a near spiritual journey as well. But I think...
Why do you say that? Why do you say spiritual?
Spiritual from an angle of climbing mountains where I can kind of, your ego gets such a beating. Like when you are in the mountain, like everyone says Kuntal conquered Everest. I'm like, I didn't conquer Everest, okay? Like Everest gave me a big kick in my ass. That is what, happened on the mountain. Okay, I didn't conquer Everest. Yes, I conquered a lot of things which were a lot of my internal self-doubts, a lot of limitations that we set for ourselves, and a whole host of those things, like how, Sir Edmund Hillary would say that I conquered myself. Right? So that happened, but I didn't conquer Everest, right? mere humble guest on the slopes of that mountain. So spiritually, from that angle where you surrender to the mountain and you are one with the mountain and you are
The mercy of
at
it.
the mercy of it. You're not thinking it that I'm trying to conquer Everest or I'm trying to win Everest or those kind
But
of
that's a
things.
mentality, dominance over nature as
So
well, not knowing.
unfortunately, that's what happens outside, and I'm like, people, I don't care. I don't think in that way. I like when I'm in a mountain, I as you said, I'm at the mercy of it, or I'm surrendering to it, and it's like my father passed away in 2019, but I find my father in the mountain, so it's like I'm going home, kind of a thing. So anyway, I um, so that's the bit, but honestly, yes, that bit can take you very far in life. That kind of thinking that you have. But you need a much stronger why. You need an insanely strong why that you truly believe in. And for me, that why is my veganism. Uh, as I said in the beginning, right, there's no delineation between Kuntal Joisher and veganism. So it is what started, it is what gave me birth, right? That Kuntal from 21 years ago, I would not even be friends with that guy, honestly. I don't even know him. So, so that rebirth that happened through veganism, and that it has been my cause for such a long period of time. Anytime I feel down and out in the mountains, like feel like giving up, has happened rarely. But if I feel like that, like I will always tell myself, why are you here? You are here for the animals, right? It is something bigger than just me, my spiritual journey, my, I. Right? It is about animals. Someone will come and say, why do you need to climb a mountain for animals? And all of those things, they'll always say comments on social media and all of those things happen. But for me, this is my why, is to what allows me to get over some of these roadblocks where I feel very down and out and I'm like, क्या हो रहा है यार 3 साल हो गए आई एम ट्राइंग फॉर कुंतल 3.0 बट आई एम लाइक स्टिल स्टक हियर बट आई एम लाइक ओके 10 साल भी लगेंगे तो करूंगा मैं 15 साल लगेंगे तो भी करूंगा सो आई एम लाइक let's just keep on and on and on, and I think that veganism is what allows me to do that quite a bit of a level. So
That's
that's
what
where
carries you through.
that's my why. That's
Yeah.
my why.
Wow, that's a big why. It's a very big why on, behalf of millions of people and billions of animals across.
80 billion land animals every year, so yeah, we all have to make it our why, right? All every vegan has to have this as their why, right? To represent the 80 billion land animals that are getting killed, right? And god knows how many trillion sea animals, right? So
Yeah, and you're doing that literally at the top of the world. So that's
going and shouting at the top of the world.
no wonder your voice is as loud as it is as your wife tells you. But I get that. Knowing that you've been on the mountains for so long, have you over the years seen any impact of climate change? Have you seen glaciers melting? Have you seen any impact in terms of biodiversity? Anything at all? Temperatures, for that matter. Have you seen any direct impacts of climate change throughout your adventures?
Especially like for example climate change, like let's say talk in terms of Everest, right? I went in 2010 and I remember walking to Everest base camp, and I remember seeing the big ice towers coming out of the Khumbu ice fall, and there was not a lot of mud or a lot of underneath like glacier getting exposed. I didn't see any of those things, and I've gone 22 times now in the last 13 years, so I have seen the place change significantly, and those towers have shrunk quite a bit.
You've seen that.
I
You've
have
seen that
seen that.
visibly.
I have seen that. And for example, even when I spoke with Tim in 2014, Tim has been climbing Everest since 1990s. So he has seen the changes happen from 1990 to 2014. And he was also, by the time maybe I come 10 years later, these towers would have been totally disappeared. And that is truly happening as the towers go in and in. And they are, I don't know if you saw, there was this National Geographic article where they drilled on the glacier at South Col, which is at 26,000 feet, and they started seeing that there was a significant loss to a point like I think something like 2,000 years of loss that happened in like a very short duration.
What does that loss do to mountaineering? What does that do to, climbers and hikers and
I
trekkers?
don't
Like,
think
what is that?
it is that local, right? Like us mountaineers going on the mountain and doing some trash. Yes, that is a problem. Don't get me wrong. Right? Trash is a problem on Everest. People, criticize me that, hey, you are climbing, but there's so much trash. But trash is not what is causing the glaciers melting, right? It
No,
is
I
what we
mean,
are
what
doing
does
at
it do
global
to your
scale.
experience? What does that, the impact of climate change, you seeing that significantly and that, visibly, what does that do to your experience over the years?
It makes it more unsafe on the mountain, right? Lesser snowfall is happening. The snow that was holding rocks onto the mountain, right, on the steeper slopes, is now all getting exposed. All those rocks are falling. They are in the path of the climb. All of those is that is creating significant amount of risk. Storms that were not happening are now happening at weird times, coming in, and seasons are just going completely whack. Suddenly last year there was like on Everest usually you will have 3 to 5 good summit days. Last year they had 21, 22 days of people just climbing. Temperatures going as low as -20. This is not Everest. This is like temperatures of a 6,000-meter peak that we are seeing on the tallest mountain of the planet. Right? That is going to impact that mountain. That is going to impact everything that is downstream. But as I said, this is not what we are locally doing on Everest that is causing a mess. It is what we are doing globally that is causing a mess across the world, across all the mountain ranges of the world.
Absolutely. Is there anything we can do, sea level, summit level, to either stop this, slow this down, reverse this? I mean, I know there are irreversible changes, but is there anything that you think we can do concretely?
I feel the very first thing that we can do is all we can start a plant-based diet, right? We can all consume a plant-based diet because getting protein and calories from animals is causing a havoc today. It is highly inefficient. It is causing significant degree of biodiversity loss. It is causing significant amount of pollution problems or water issues. So many things, right? Like imagine the amount of land required to grow a goat compared to all that feed that you're feeding it and letting it go through an entire life cycle, then slaughtering it for mere small amount of protein and calories, whereas you can get infinitely more amount of calories and food directly from plants. And imagine the amount of ethical impact, right? Like the amount of killing we are doing. If we can just stop that and we can shift to a more plant-based diet, we can start. I would like to think that we can. I would like to think we are not in an irreversible change. Yes, I have heard this from many people that this is irreversible, that we are going, racing towards a significant, issue with climate. I would like to think I am someone who's an eternal optimist. So I would like to think that this is reversible and that if people started just consuming a more plant-based diet, this would definitely be one step towards reversing the impact of what climate change is.
One of my last questions to you is going to be any mountaineer athlete, anyone who's trying to, build a better body, get into fitness, anyone that's kind of been deterred from going vegan or adopting a plant-based diet, is there anything you'd like to tell them?
First of all, don't listen to anyone who says, no. Imagine if, in 2019, in 2009, when I decided to climb Everest and I would have listened to all those people who said, Kuntal, it can't be done as a vegan, then I would not have been the first vegan in the world to climb Everest, right? It was my dream. It was my baby. And I did not give up on my baby, right? So no one gives up. Like, I would hope no one gives up on their babies, right? So that said, I also wanted to point out that 2009, I was obese, Gujarati software engineer, uh, no genetic disposition to climb any mountains, nothing, right? If I could turn around my life and go climb Everest not just once but twice, honestly, on a vegan diet, all athletes, all sports people, you can do anything you like. There's nothing is impossible, right? Like nothing is impossible on a vegan diet. You just have to take the first step and go on the journey to do it. And there are enough of us all across the world. If you run into any roadblocks and you need any help, we are there to support you. So if people need any help, you're most welcome to write into my DMs that, hey, I'm, struggling with this or, this piece. I'm more than willing to help. People can most I'm more active on Instagram, so people can reach out to me at Kuntal J on Instagram. Or if you want to come on LinkedIn, feel free to message on LinkedIn. Feel free to message on Facebook. Feel free to write to me on email or WhatsApp or anywhere, right? Like I mean, I don't care.
Yeah,
Like if you
slide into your DMs wherever.
if you forget who I
wherever.
am, then just type on in
World's
Google
first
world's
vegan
first vegan
mountaineer.
mountaineer, and
Yeah.
you will find me, and then just write to me.
Yeah. Incredible. Thank you so much for being here today. It was absolutely wonderful having you. And I am rooting for Kuntal 3.0 when you get to bodybuilding and being a mountaineer and doing that on a completely vegan diet and vegan clothing. You're an absolute inspiration. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much. And best of luck to you as well with your new initiative.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope to, together spread the vegan word and
That's
make a more compassionate world.
that's the goal. Kinder, compassionate, greener world at the same time, and you're leading that in a lot of ways. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.